Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us as a part of what Brent and I are working at, mostly Brent. We're just talking about things that part of the problem with our country today. Thanks for coming. This is commonlawyer.com. You can view these videos on Brent's YouTube channel. So I encourage you to do that, but also check out Brent's website, commonlawyer.com, a wealth of information. We've been doing quite a few chats here lately, connecting the dots and other things, plus Brent's stuff. Just trying to inform us all. So I learned a lot from these talks too. So, Brent, we were going to talk about the Laodiceans, the Nicolaitans.
Nicolaitans, yeah. We all these unusual, weird, un-American sounding words.
It is a part of history, though.
What's that?
It is a part of history, though.
Oh, yeah, and part of the Bible, Nicolaitans. These Nicolaitans in the book of Revelation, that's what we talked about the other day, and I don't think they're mentioned anywhere else specifically. But the Nicolaitans were a sect, a religious sect, that comes under many different labels today, but it's all the same stuff. We used to back the manure spreader up to the barn door where the cattle would go in and eat out of the big manger we had in there, right up in the feedway. And then cattle don't have any sense about not fouling their nest, so they fill the barn up, and we'd go out there with shovels, have to scoop it out so you could at least get in the door. And my brother, being younger, and we had a ground-driven manure spreader and an old one, and we were supposed to scoop the manure into the manure spreader. And that manure in there would get packed down, Dan. I know you understand this. It would get packed down, and when you stick your shovel into it, because the cattle will be walking on it over a period of a year or two, you stick your shovel into it, and it's still moist underneath, and it's pretty alive with bacteria, I'm sure. And it has a pungent odor. And Dad was in there checking on us, see if we were doing our job, and staying busy. And I mentioned that to Dad, and he said, well, there's a lot of things like that in life, and the more they pile up, and the more false doctrines get piled up, and they talk about them, you turn them over later, you dig down to the bottom of them, and they stink worse than when they were first mentioned or first piled up. Well, that's the way I've found it is with false doctrine, false teaching. It's there. We essentially, people drag ancient false doctrines out of the graves by their ears where they've been buried, like manure. They drag them out of the graves and dance around them as though they're new and novel, and that's the doctrine of the Nicolaitans. It's all around us today, different labels and all, but it's still here. Well, what does it say? It says simply this. I was going to read the passage. I think it's Revelation chapter 2. I believe it's verse 6, but John the Apostle talks about the Nicolaitans. Let me see if I can just grab here. I scrolled on my computer. It doesn't go fast enough. In chapter 2, and he talks about the 7 churches, and of course there's trainloads of information you can read about that. Probably most of it is false, but most people, yeah, here it is. The second chapter of the last book of the Bible, verse 6. And not John, rather. But God is speaking. He says, I have somewhat against you. He's talking about a particular church here. Let me just read the passage. That's the safe thing to do. Chapter 2, unto the angel of the church of Ephesus write, These things saith he that holden the 7 stars. And he talks about the things they've done there, the church at Ephesus. Of course, the church of Ephesus, that's where Paul the Apostle wrote his letter to. We get to verse 6, and it says, But this thou hast, that thou hatest the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. You hate the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. And then you get over to verse 14, and he seems to connect the deeds of the Nicolaitans with the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block, that's a toe stubber, before the children of Israel, and to eat things sacrificed to idols, and to commit fornication. The doctrine of Balaam, that's the Nicolaitans, is the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before God's people. A stumbling block, that means a toe stubber, something that will stub you up, slow you down. Have you ever had a broken toe?
No, I haven't, but I've stubbed my toe and it feels like it's broke.
It's a killer. You know, when you stub your toe, it doesn't hurt for a little bit. You notice that? But you know the pain is coming. You hit your toe and you go, uh-oh, and then a few seconds later, wham, the pain hits you, and you grimace hard, and maybe you broke your toe, maybe you didn't. That's painful too. But that's what the Bible likens false doctrine to, is a toe stubber. It stubs you up, and it is painful. It'll mess you up in more ways you can imagine. Yeah, I've had a broken toe. That's no fun either. But when we get to verse 14, maybe I can get on the winterized version of the Bible here. Well, we find more about what the doctrine of the Nicolaitans is. Nikao means to conquer or to overcome. To conquer. Nicholas, shortened to Nick, Nicolaitans, that name is a word that means to conquer in Latin or Greek. It's a Greek word. Also, we have a laos on the end, Nicolaitans, that's to conquer people. And these doctrines are doctrines that conquer people. Remember in the Old Testament, Balak, he was an emperor, and he wanted to conquer the Israelites who had just come out of Egypt. He could see they were on a roll. He was scared of them. And so he hired a prophet, a real prophet of God named Balaam. He said, I want you to curse these people for me. And he tried, and Balaam wanted to do it because he was willing to pay him a massive fee out of the treasury of his wealthy government. You can imagine what that's like. Well, look at all the graphs that's going on in America today, that they're weeding out how many billions and trillions of dollars have disappeared. Well, that's the way it was with this emperor in that day. He was going to pay this prophet a lot of money if he'd say what he wanted him to say. But Balaam said, I can't do that. I know what God has said, and God did not curse these people, so it wouldn't do any good if I did it anyway. But he still wanted that massive fee. He was trying to find a way to help this guy conquer Israel without telling him a lie, telling the truth. He hit upon a plan. And this plan upon which he hit is the doctrine of the Nicolaitans. And this plan upon which he hit has been and still is the doctrine that the useful idiots of the evil empire use to conquer countries. It's very effective, very effective. You tell, this doctrine is to our enemies, and it tells our enemies, it doesn't tell our enemies that God has cursed us. It tells our enemies that God has given us a law, and it requires certain things of us to do or not to do. Once you teach other people the law of God, Well, the law of God will tell us what will destroy us. And they then, see, instead of just cursing us directly, they provide to us what will destroy us, knowing that there'll be enough of us, weak enough of heart, out of control with our lusts, that will accept it and do it. Don't kid yourself. Our enemies are flooding us with pornography. That's our enemies. They know. They've got it figured out. God said this will destroy people. These are God's people, and this is what will destroy them. It will ruin their effectiveness. It will weaken them from within. The doctrine of Balaam is to teach our enemies that fornication, adultery, idolatry with an I, adultery with an A, by the way, in the Bible, in the Hebrew Old Testament and in the New Testament, those two things, idolatry and adultery, translate the same words. The Bible doesn't distinguish very much between idolatry and adultery. So we're talking here, and the two always go together. Sexual perversion and idolatry always go together. Did you ever wonder why Roman priests are known for being pedophiles all over the world, have been for centuries? Well, consider the idolatry, the use of visual aids to worship. Well, that's the doctrine of the Nicolaitans and the doctrine of Balaam. That's the doctrine that destroyed Germany in the 1930s, weakened her from within. She was on the verge, economic collapse, family collapse, all sorts of collapse. It was all there because the enemies of Germany were providing everything that appealed to the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, that's idolatry, the lust of the flesh, fornication, and the vainglory of life, saying you're somebody you ain't.
So if I could interrupt, is that a plan of evil men, or is that just a pure spiritual level, satanic from Satan?
I say it's both. From what I understand of the Bible, it's both. Men catch on. There are men that are evil and they are bad to the bone. Most men are just evil because they're ignorant. They don't want really to hurt anybody, but they get desperate. They're desperados of various kinds. Most of us fall into that category to varying degrees. Desperados. You get fearful, you do things you don't want to do, you mistake, you try to do right, you fall short. That's the malady of being in the flesh. But there are those folk out there that are bad to the bone. They want to kill, steal, and destroy. And they've made a fine art out of it. And they're trying to find a way to bring our country, for instance. I'm an American, so I think about my country. If you're from another country, you should think about yours. And the better you hold up, the better we're encouraged to hold up. And the better we hold up as Americans, the better we can encourage our kinfolk around the world to hold up, including those that are not kinfolk of blood, but kinfolk of common salvation, Christian people. Both of them.
You referenced a plan. You talked about Germany, and it happened to Germany. Who was influencing that?
Well, the
adultery.
Germany during the Weimar Republic in the 1930s, 1920s, 30s, was overtaken by such gross, almost unbelievable immorality that it was shocking to the rest of the world. And it was taking them down economically as well. As was said at that time, you could walk out of any fancy high-end hotel in Berlin or Munich and have your pick for your sexual pleasure of as many girls as you want at the same time or at different times, or as many men as you wanted, or as many children, boys or girls, as you wanted. It was in the open. It wasn't prosecuted. It was offered to the German people, and it was utterly, they were down anyway because at the behest of Woodrow Wilson, they were forced, and others that followed him, wanted to force them into a position of utter humility after the First World War, and they were discouraged. And World War II was largely the result of the stupidity of the Allies in World War I in trying to force Germany into what they tried to force them into. By the way, Germany didn't lose that war. It was a stalemate, and everybody just got tired and quit. That's pretty much what happened. They said, this is nuts. We can't do this for the rest of eternity. We won't even exist. But then, when the Allies got the upper hand economically, they began to, and the United States was the economic upper hand. Everybody else was destroyed, both Germany, the Axis powers, we call them sometimes, and the Allied powers. Everybody was destroyed except America. And so we had the economic power to do that, and we shouldn't have. But there were people in Germany, and that is why Germany tried to bring themselves out of that over hatred of a religion that was foreign to them, namely Judaism. And they saw that Judaism was utilizing that doctrine against them and becoming wealthy. That's what history says. And this is what the Bible teaches. It's just the way things are. And that's why they did what they did. And that's why it got out of control. Instead of dealing with the doctrines of Judaism the way Jesus Christ said to deal with them, they dealt with them according to the flesh. And it got out of hand. It started out kind of okay, but it did get out of hand. It started out, the government of Germany under Hitler put up a program and said to the Jewish people, you can leave and we'll help you establish the state of Israel. And we'll provide all of the money you need to pack up your household goods and move and give you a stipend and get you started. That's the way it started. By the way, it's ironic, isn't it, that Adolf Hitler arguably is the founder of the modern state of Israel. That really happened. But in time, as all political things, it draws people that are out of control as well. And they drive the doctrine to extremes, and it wasn't long till during the war, it really got started. There were those in the government that were killing Jewish people. Of course, they were imprisoning them. They wanted them to leave, is what they wanted, but it got out of hand, and they tried to deal with them from the flesh. And the people that did it were not Christian people. They wanted to start a new religion even that was unique to Germany, and as worship, ancestor worship of the Nordic gods and the Scandinavian gods. And to go back and see what they did and how far they went, it's no wonder that in the end God saw to their destruction, because they went about dealing with the doctrine of the Nicolaitans in the wrong way. But yeah, that Judaism was offering all those things, pornography and the drug trade and the movie industry and the press and the universities. They were controlling them, the benches of their law, and they were infusing doctrines, Talmudic doctrines, and all that. And Germany, the government, got out of control. That's why I say, though, the doctrines of the Nicolaitans, how do you destroy a people? You offer them what appeals to the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the vainglory of life. That's how you destroy people. That's the doctrine of the evil empire. A front-on attack by military might probably won't do it. If a people's strong, you can't conquer a people that are strong on the inside, that aren't practicing idolatry and idolatry. It's impossible. Like Abe Lincoln said, no foreign army will ever drink a drop of water from the Ohio River or make a track on the Appalachians unless we are weakened from within. Unless we are weakened from within, no blow from without could ever destroy us. That's
Brent,
important to understand. Back to you, Dan.
It sounds like you're reading today's headlines in the newspaper.
In what way?
Just everything except take the name Germany out and put USA.
Oh, no, that's true. Isn't it funny? Odd in that sense, that the cry of the MAGA, Make America Great Again, is America first. Is there anything wrong with that? No, there's everything right about that. We've got to take care of ourselves first, or we're nothing but a burden to everybody else. But that was the cry of Adolf Hitler, Germany first. That's where that comes from. Is there anything wrong with it? No, if there's a Christian point of view behind it. But again, if we as Americans try to abandon Christianity, abandon Jesus Christ and his orders about how to handle the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, the doctrine of Balaam, how to handle our enemies doing these things, we'll go down like Germany did. Jesus Christ tells us very specifically how to handle false religion and the doctrine of Balaam, which is the doctrine of the Nicolaitans. That's the way I understand it for what it's worth, but I will add that's my studied opinion after many decades of involvement in politics and the laws of nature and the laws of nature's God, our common law and our Bibles. This is Brent Allan Winters, and I'm here with the other elder at In Church, INN. I call him Montana Dan. And we're talking about a subject that came up yesterday when we were on the Dan Happel show. And that's the doctrine of the Nicolaitans. And a lot of fussing and weeping and gnashing of teeth been going on about what that doctrine is for centuries. I think I can see it clearly here, and then I can go back to the narrative in the Older Testament about Balaam. What it comes down to, friends, is without the Word of God, which is the handle the Spirit of God uses, we cannot withstand the temptations that are put before us that will destroy us as a nation. We as Americans, as Christian, if we're Christian folk, the person of the gumption breath of God, the Spirit of God himself, lives in our bodies. He has invaded every part of our flesh and bones and blood. That's real. But only as the Word of God, the Bible itself, and laws of nature's God, our common law tradition, are put in mental sod, will he have the handle he needs to guide us. He will see to it that happens, but he also tells us to do it. That's one of the ways he sees to it that happens. And if we don't respond to him properly, if we don't listen to the Word of God, speak the Word of God, chew the Word of God like a cow chews cud, you got to know it first. Take an opportunity to hear it taught. Well, that's what we're talking about here. It's in the Bible, the doctrine of the Nicolaitans and the story of Balaam. If we don't do that, then the Spirit doesn't have the handle he needs. There's the Spirit. The Spirit has to go with the letter of what God said. One without the other doesn't work. You got to have both oars in the water. You're just going to go in circles. If you want to move forward, you got to have the Spirit, the letter of what God said, and the Spirit of it. Well, Dan, thank you very much for taking time to talk. We're not here to slam other religions, but we are here to say what's false and true and how to guard against falsity, because once you're weakened from within, you are subjected physically to the force and violence of the evil empire. And you're going to topple. You're going to topple.
Yeah, I think it's been said, if you don't understand or know history, you will repeat it. And we don't want to repeat that part of our world history here.
No. And here's the history we start with. This book is filled with what happened and the record of it, the affidavits of God, the testimony, as Isaiah puts it, the law and the testimony of what happened. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Brent. Check out Brent's website, www.commonlawyer.com. I think you have a new class coming up, too, that's going to be pretty appropriate. And
well, I'm excited about it. Hope everybody else is. You can come and watch me be excited. And thank you for mentioning that. Go to commonlawyer.com and join us for our comparative law class. We teach law classes. Sheriff Darleaf and I from Berry County, Michigan. Teach law. We've taught quite a few, about a dozen, I think. But they're all there in the can, audio and visual. You can take the courses. These are the courses, some of them that I took when I was in law school, or rather they took me. And also other courses that I believe should have been taught when I was in law school. I try to teach those. We're teaching comparative law, comparing and contrasting the only two traditions of religion, law, and government available to mankind, the law of the land and the law of the city. Our common law and the civil canon laws of Rome, as we put it in modern terms. And you can't know our common law tradition unless it is compared and contrasted with that other antagonist that's always been there. And I'm not the first man to say that. Comparative lawyers have said that, comparing and contrasting the law of the land and the law of the city so that it becomes more apparent, more obvious what our common law is. That's what we're going to try to do. Sign up for that course so it helps us keep us going too. Thank you, Dan.